give us a call.
We know a good lawyer.
You want to make sure you get your homeowner's insurance on the line. If it's your neighbor's tree, you might want to get their homeowner's insurance on the line. But we got so much to do today, we don't have time to be talking about homeowners' claims. Folks, if you've got a question, you can post it on YouTube. You can also give us a call at 215-227-2727, the number for all things legal. We have a special studio audience today. Hey, guys, thanks for showing up. Place is packed.
It is.
If you missed out on this live show, we'll have another one in the fall. But our topics today are what to expect if you've been involved in an accident and you've never done it before. You're beginning this thing called litigation. What should you expect? Where will your case go? How long will it take? What will the end result be? And how will you get there? All of those questions. And we've asked two special clients of the firm to join us. And the first one is Kathy D. I'm going to leave her last name out for purposes of anonymity. I don't want her family calling her and finding out that she's, got some cash or something. But Kathy, welcome to Court Radio.
Thank you.
So I want to just say that Kathy came to the firm, I don't know, maybe it's been a couple years, and she had a story to tell. Give us just the quick thumbnail sketch of what happened to you.
I fell, tripped, and I got injured pretty badly. Couldn't walk for 4 months, and I had a hard time finding a lawyer to take my case till I found MyPhillyLawyer.
Yeah, that she had gone through at least two sets of lawyers who had taken her on and dropped her and passed her on to somebody else, and it was a big mess in that regard. So you came to us probably about, was it 6 months after the accident?
It was about 9 months.
9 months, okay. She had been attempting to navigate herself out of the Philadelphia airport and tripped and fell. You know those things that puncture tires when you're going the wrong direction?
Wow.
They had them set up at the airport, not one, not two, but 3 sets of those. She was dragging a suitcase. It was the only way for her to leave this area. There was no pedestrian ingress or egress. Her suitcase got caught up on one of the sets of prongs, and her leg got caught up in the second set. Fair enough?
Correct.
How deep was that wound? Was that a song, Manuel?
It could be.
It was about 5 inches deep, about 4 or 5 inches long. Wow. One of the wounds.
Yeah. How long did it take for you to heal from that wound?
I'm still healing. I'm still working on it.
What are some of the consequences? What happened as a result? Like, what couldn't you do?
I couldn't walk for about 4 months. My leg was in a straight cast. I had drain tubes in my leg. I had an open wound on the top of my leg because it was too big for them to close. So I wore a wound vac for 3 months. So I wasn't allowed to drive. I couldn't walk without a walker. And then once everything was closed, I did 20 weeks of physical therapy.
Now, I want to be honest here. I've got Josh Gale on the panel with me. Josh is an attorney at MyPhillyLawyer, and really is my go-to guy. I did not meet Kathy when she first came to the firm. Josh did the intake interview. And my first thought was, I'm not sure I want this case. It's going to be a difficult case because one of the things that you have to show when you've been involved in a slip and fall is that there was a defective condition and the defective condition caused your injury. But when you have such an open and obvious defective condition, some responsibility falls on you for having encountered it and not taken steps necessary to protect yourself. So with all these things swirling around in my head, I was like, But Josh, what did you see in the case?
Good morning, everybody. So first of all, I saw Kathy, who is a great client, and she had great injuries for our purposes. But great injuries don't get you past causation and liability. And in this instance, liability was clearly the challenge because, as you said, these security spikes, everybody knows what they are. You can see them. They were painted bright yellow. Kathy and her husband were going to the airport at about 4 in the morning, and they had just dropped off their car, and they were walking towards the airport when Kathy, as you mentioned, she tripped and she fell on one set of the security spikes and then fell onto the second. So the first thing that I did was we have this wonderful thing called the internet where you can go onto Google and you can take a look and see the actual site of where this incident took place. And not only can you see in present time, but you can also see previous years. And so we were able to look back on previous years and see the condition of these security spikes over the course of about a 12-year period of time, on basically an annual basis, and see the deterioration of these spikes over that period of time. And not only were they deteriorated, they were removed in different ways, and a lot of it just didn't make sense. It was sort of haphazard. They were in disrepair. And it made me wonder, what were they doing? What were they thinking? So along with our office manager, Dina Fisher, we went down and we did a site inspection right away. And we went down there with Kathy, and she explained exactly what happened. And we noticed that Kathy's story wasn't unique. In fact, everyone who was parking their car there was using this driver entrance as a pedestrian exit, because there was no other way to get out of the parking lot other than waiting for a shuttle bus, which for Kathy never came. Kathy was at the airport early in the morning, and there was no shuttle bus, and she was trying to catch a flight. And so her and her husband made the decision, which was a rational decision, to simply cross the street, go into the parking garage, and then there's the terminal right there. And so if Kathy wasn't the only one doing it, we believed that the defendant in this case, that they knew, or they should have known, that pedestrians like Kathy were doing exactly this, and that pedestrians like Kathy should have a safe way to exit the parking lot. The other thing that we found on the Google Street View was there was a photo in one of the dates of a woman doing exactly what Kathy did, walking across the street, and she was stopped waiting for traffic to go by. So, we wanted to make sure that this defendant was doing what they were supposed to do in this instance. So we had to hire experts. We did a lot of investigation. We also, in that site inspection, we took a lot of video and photographs, and we determined that they just didn't have adequate safety measures in place to protect pedestrians who they knew or should have known were using this driveway entrance as a pedestrian exit.
I want to just say, he said a lot in a short period of time, but it really goes to show you the type of product that we do at MyPhillyLawyer. A lot of firms that you see advertising in Philadelphia right now, even some local firms and some firms from other states, they're not actually representing clients. They're not having boots on the ground, attorneys going to visit the site where the client fell. They are simply an aggregator. That's an interesting word, but what happens is you call somebody on the internet, they take your information, they may or may not be lawyers, and they pass that on to another law firm with whom you do not have a relationship, never, and you didn't know anything about them, and you're not sure if they're really able to handle your case the way you would expect it to be handled.
Woof, excuse me.
You all right there?
Yeah, I'm
son?
all right.
All right. So at MyPhillyLawyer, we do all of our own investigating. We're handling the cases on the ground, and somebody like Josh or myself is involved in every case, and we have a relationship with our clients that I think pays dividends at the end. So in this case, let's try to give the listeners a very quick summary of the steps we took once we've engaged the client, once we're signed the client up, they're now our client. What had to happen at that point?
Yeah, and you raised an interesting point also, which is that Kathy had been through 3 other law firms and trying to find justice from those 3 other law firms, and I don't believe they took those measures. They didn't have the same legal theory that we were able to develop, which is that, okay, this was a purportedly open and obvious danger, but that doesn't mean that the landowner in this instance or the property management company has no duty to protect people. And so we began the process of discovery at that point. Once we filed the lawsuit, we started the process of discovery, which there's several things that we do, but we send written requests for what's called interrogatories, which is just a fancy legal word for questions. We sent a series of questions to determine what policies and procedures this defendant was using to install and maintain and repair these security spikes. And then we also, once we had that in place, we gathered all that evidence.
We also send a request for documents. So any prior accidents that may have happened there, we want to know about that, because that would have given notice to the landowner that there was a problem that they needed to correct. And we sent those requests, and they ignored those requests repeatedly until we had to file a motion, maybe several motions.
Several motions, yes.
Several motions.
And as it turned out, there were other incidents
that they were hiding. They were not willing to share that information easily with us. And we discovered that there were a number of incidents prior to Kathy's, weeks before her, where the same kind of accident happened. And what happened at that point?
At that point, once we were able to uncover that evidence, it became pretty clear that the attorney on the other side was pushing to get the case towards a resolution. And so we communicated that with our client, with Kathy. And, she had a lot of optimism about putting this incident behind her in her life and being able to move forward. And so we discussed the possibility of going to what's called a mediation with the other side, in which we would use a neutral lawyer. Sometimes they're arbitrators, sometimes they're mediators. In this instance, we used a mediator. And both sides presented their case to the mediator, discussed the range of what they believed that the case was worth, and we went to that mediation. We submitted all of our evidence, and the mediator definitely believed that Kathy would have made an excellent witness.
Let me ask Kathy, what was your? There was 2 times, I believe, in this case where you actually were performing, that you had to vocalize what happened and participate in a process. The first probably being something called a deposition. Do you recall you giving a deposition in this case?
Correct. They asked me a series of questions. They asked to look at the injuries. They measured the injuries on my leg, took pictures, videos, the part of my leg that is now gone. They asked questions about that as well.
And during this question session, you were under oath.
Correct.
Had you ever done that before?
No, never.
And what was it like? I mean, were you scared before you did?
I was a little scared, a little nervous, but I knew I didn't do anything wrong. And I knew that, what I was telling them was the truth, exactly what happened and why it happened.
And then the second stop was, oftentimes you're going to hear a client in the second half of the show that actually tried her case. Kathy's case took a shortcut. It went from this discovery phase where we're gathering information, finding out what the other side knows about the defect, and we went from there to a settlement phase. And we, as Josh said, chose a mediator. Both sides chose one, and that mediator heard the case. What was that like? And what were your expectations before the mediation? Did you expect it to end? Were you hopeful? Where did we land on that?
I was hoping it would end. I mean, I didn't really want to take it to trial because of the bad experiences I had with the previous lawyers who didn't want to help me. And basically, we back and forth. I mean, I didn't really do any of the work there. You did all the work with the mediator, with the other lawyer. You did all the discussion. So I just basically sat there and waited.
Dean, the process from once you got it, you get in touch with Josh. Josh, all the devil in the detail research and investigation you did, how long did it take?
Prior to the resolution, it was about a year.
About a year. And the work, that investigative stuff, looking at Google, looking at 12 years back, you looked at that site?
We were able to investigate that site based off of Google images that were preserved from about 2012 on to present date.
And other firms that you had went to weren't willing to put in that due diligence.
They claimed they did work, but they did They claimed they did work, but they did absolutely nothing.
All right, that's the difference.
And so Josh says it took about a year for this case, and that is a pretty quick turnaround. I would say the average expectation a client should have when they come to the firm is their case will be around for probably 2 years. More complex cases, longer, and more cases that are smaller and less complex, maybe as little as a year. Hers was a complex case and only took a year because we had proven so many bad facts against the defendant that they threw the white flag up pretty early on in the process and were serious about resolving it at mediation. Sometimes you can go to a mediation and the other side's still just trying to feel you out, and it doesn't resolve. You go there, you put your best foot forward, the other side may not, and you walk away without a settlement, and you continue on the litigation path. So mediating isn't necessarily the end of your case. Sometimes mediation is the middle part of your case, and it doesn't work out, and from mediation we continue to gear up for trial.
And oftentimes you'll hear that the best resolution is a resolution where both sides give a little bit. In this instance, we had that smoking gun, and we knew that that was a pretty powerful piece of evidence that would help us in this case. So at the mediation, the case resolved definitely in our favor, much closer to the range that we valued the case at, and it was in that range. And I think Kathy was really ecstatic with the result. The other interesting thing about Kathy's case was we got to her 9 months after her injury. So she had already done a lot of the treatment that most of the clients are just getting into when they first come to us. And so Kathy's case, we had it for about a year because she was already 9 months after the injury.
Good point. Good point. Because often, that first year that you're a client of our firm, you're treating. You're working on trying to get better and get your health back because we can't determine the value of your case until you've gone through the treatment process. Because if you get better in 3 months, your case may have value of 1x. But if it takes you 9 months to get better, or at 9 months the doctor throws up his hands and says you're never going to get better, then obviously then the value of the case will continue to increase. If you've been out of work, all of these elements of your case are things that we're assessing as we go along. And while we may be working on the case early on, we're in no position to even begin filing a lawsuit or wrapping it up until we have a better handle on what your injuries are.
The other thing that's interesting about Kathy is she was doing everything possible to get better as soon as possible. She went through a grueling recovery. She has, really a horrific injury to her leg. She had 2 puncture wounds, and essentially it looks like a shark bit her leg and took a piece out of her leg. And she'll have that for the rest of her life. But Kathy's a tremendous client because she put everything into her recovery, everything into getting better, and everything to moving forward with her life. So she presented well as a witness in her deposition. We were confident that if we had to go to trial, that we would get an excellent result. But as you said, if you go that route, sometimes that can take multiple years because it has to work its way through the court system.
Kathy, I'm sorry.
I was just going to end that. That's the benefit of going to a resolution like a mediation in this case.
What kind of work were you doing, or what type of active life were you having prior to the accident? Did it change after the accident?
I was an avid runner, so I used to run 6 miles every morning. Spin class, hiking, biking, gym classes. I mean, I'm asked my husband. I'm in the gym every day. I'm in sales, so I'm active. I've always been active, and I still can't really run.
Yeah.
And Kathy and her husband were avid travelers as well. In fact, they were on their way to Las Vegas that morning, and this incident.
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah, man. Well, you hit the jackpot when you found Dean Weissman.
Right? So, Josh, what was your best highlight of this case? Like, what will you remember about this case for a long time?
I think it's Kathy. Kathy is a tremendous client. She put our faith into our firm after having been scorned by 3 previous. I think it was hard for her to initially find that level of trust in another law firm after her experiences with prior. But we were honest with her throughout the process. We told her how much we believed not just in the case, but in her. And, one of the most difficult things sometimes is managing clients' expectations. But I think if you're honest with them and forthright with them in the beginning, you're able to develop that level of trust. And I think at the end of the day, Kathy trusted our firm and was pretty happy with the result.
So often, a client's relationship with the law firm is the key factor here. I mean, because there are important decisions to be made, and there needs to be a level of trust. When I tell a client, there was a client who called the other day whose case is at that point where they're making settlement offers, and they made me an offer of $50,000, and then I thought it was a reasonable offer. Now, I've got a wealth of knowledge, to kind of filter that offer through and understand why it's the right offer. Now, my job is to have to be able to explain that to a client who has no experience. And there has to be a level of trust there that they understand I'm not just trying to resolve a case so that I make a fee and close a file. If I stand behind a number, I believe in that number. I'm not going to undersettle a case for my benefit to the detriment of my client. But if there's no trust between me and the client, they don't know that. And so their first expectation is, well, you're not getting me enough money because you don't want to do the work.
And I think also, this work that we're in, this profession that we're in, it's intellectual in some ways, but really what it's about is building relationships. We're building relationships not only with our client, but sometimes also with the insurance companies, the attorneys on the other side. And we've developed a reputation that we can be trustworthy. And that's not the case for all law firms like us.
That is true. I hear from insurance industry personnel about certain law firms in the city who, for purposes of today, will remain nameless, that they look at them as jokes.
Come on, throw us a bone.
Nah, I can't do it. It's bibbity and bibbity.
Kathy, let me ask you this. It's important to have a relationship with the attorneys that are handling your case. Were they easy to get on the phone, and did you hear from them often, or when you needed to? And
whenever I needed something, they called me. If they didn't answer, they called me right back.
There you
If
go.
they were in a deposition or if they were in court, they left me a text. I'll call you when I'm done. If they weren't available, the secretary was available. I mean, I went to them from a referral, and I didn't know what to expect because I had such bad experience with the other lawyers who I thought were going to help me, and they told me basically they didn't want me wasting their time.
And as hard as we work, we have support staff that are right there with us every step of the way. So I work with a team of paralegals and legal assistants, and we're all, on top of every case that we handle. We work as a team.
Yeah, I mean, on cases such as Kathy's, it's not unusual for us to sit down, me and Josh and the paralegal legal assistant, and we're strategizing as a team about what we need to do on behalf of this client. We have meetings on her file, and that's something that doesn't happen at every firm, but it's something that should be happening if you have an expectation of having the right representation.
She had a life-altering injury. It's both physical and psychological.
Correct.
And it's good to be able to talk to your attorney. You actually could get this guy on the phone. You actually talk to him.
I have a cell phone. Yeah, I could text him whenever I want, call him whenever I want.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I have customers that won't give me their cell phone number. Call the office.
That just matters. Relationships matter with what these guys do in the city, with the different firms you guys talk to, the judges and everything, but also the relationship between the client and the attorney, especially what you went through, is really important. I'm glad you had a good experience.
It's eye-opening.
Yeah.
You think about it. There's hundreds and hundreds of lawyers you could choose from. And when you get the right one, it makes a huge, huge difference.
Oh, cut the check. That's perfect.
All right. Well, I really want to thank you for taking the time. I mean, your case is over. And you didn't. It's behind you to some extent, but you took the time today to come out to share your story with our listeners, and I really do appreciate that.
Thank you for the invite.
All right, so I think we're
Time to take a break?
Yeah, we're getting close to the break, folks. When we come back, we have Valerie L., our next client, who actually tried her case in New Jersey with Josh over a 1-week period, which is absolutely, when you think about it, this was, in Valerie's case, and I'll give a little setup, it was an automobile accident. And so in that accident, she sustained some injury. It was not the type of injury like the first client had sustained. Kathy had a life-altering injury with surgery. Valerie's injury was not as dramatic, and we had a zero offer from the insurance company, even though she was completely not at fault, was rear-ended in New Jersey, and had the insurance company offered her zip. And I'll explain to you, and Josh will explain what happens when that happens in New Jersey. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
YouTube, we're still on.
Thank you.
YouTube is still on.
YouTube, we're still on.
All right.
Yes.
Do you need one?
Raffle tickets. Take your time.
I'm done.
You are.
Okay.
You are.
Free to go. You were great.
Thank you.
Art.
Give Kathy a hand, everyone. Good job.
Take care. Thank you so much, Kathy. Yeah.
Valerie, come on up. Just have a seat.
All right. The first I am giving away a front and rear dash cam for your car.
All right, guys, give away a dash cam.
Nobody should ever, if you ever have an accident, there should never be a doubt that it's the other person's fault. And this is going to 1744. All right, we're going to do one more, and then we'll do some at the break. Well, actually, maybe do 2 more. We'll see. This little thing is cool. It snaps onto your air conditioner vent. In Philadelphia and Pennsylvania now, you must use hands-free. You cannot use your cell phone in your hand. If the police see you with a cell phone in your hand, they can stop you and give you a ticket. And so this you are allowed to use. You just the phone will just snap onto the thing magnetically, and it's going to 1749. 1749.
Hey!
All right.
I think it was rigged.
One more. This is from my friends at Radio 1. All right, real quick. They're giving away. No. Next time. Where's Valerie?
Valerie, come on up.
Okay, good morning and welcome back. I am Dean Weitzman, your host of Court Radio every Saturday morning right here on 100.3 WRNB. We have a special show for you today. If you've listened to the first half, we are live. We have a live studio audience. Make some noise, folks. Yeah. We have a live studio audience, and we are presenting 2 of our favorite clients. Client number 2 is now in the operator's seat. Good morning and welcome to the show, Valerie.
Good morning, Dean. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So you're going to speak up and speak close to the microphone. There you go. We're on radio. They have to hear you. We're, Philadelphia, New
live.
Jersey, Delaware. We're everywhere. Okay, so Valerie, you were a firm client. You had been involved in an accident in the great state of New Jersey. Let me preface by telling you that I advocate for my clients to have full tort insurance, right? Should not come as a surprise to the listening audience. That means that you have the right to sue for any injury you sustain. If you're limited tort, your injuries must be serious and permanent. So if you have an accident, you're messed up, you've gone to the doctor, you've got 6 months worth of treatment, but at the end of that process, you're all better, you're giving up the right to collect anything for your pain and suffering in that circumstance. You've given a free pass to everybody in Pennsylvania who should hit you, no matter how badly they're at fault, so long as they have not caused a permanent injury, and if you're limited tort, you don't collect. Well, if you have full tort or limited tort, doesn't matter what your tort is, and you live in Pennsylvania and you go across the bridge on your way to the shore and you have an accident, you're automatically deemed limited tort in New Jersey, regardless of whether you have a full tort policy here. And we must prove that you sustained a serious injury. In New Jersey, you don't get to pick whether you're full or limited tort. You're automatically assigned limited tort if you're a New Jersey resident, unless you actively ask the insurance company to change the policy to full tort. So most New Jersey residents have limited tort, and all Pennsylvania residents who go across the bridge end up with limited tort. That's the case with Valerie. And Valerie, what happened to you? How'd the accident happen, and what happened to you in the accident? What kind of treatment did you have?
I was driving on 42 and I got rear-ended. I was in a 4-car pileup. I was the 3rd car in, so I got hit from behind, pushed into the front of the car in front of me, and then the airbag deployed.
Okay, so pretty serious accident, rear-end accident, airbags deployed. Did you go to the hospital?
I did.
That day?
I did.
By ambulance?
No, not by ambulance.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I was in a car by myself. I was coming from work, and my car was not drivable, so I had to wait for the tow truck driver, as well as my daughter and my brother to get there, and my brother took me to the ER.
Now, what type of treatment did you have as a result of these injuries? What were your injuries?
I had neck pain, neck injury, back injury, injury to my left arm and my right leg.
Okay. And what kind of treatment did you have for those injuries?
I went to a chiropractor and got some therapy, went through some therapy sessions.
Okay. And did the therapy sessions make you all better?
No. No, they helped ease the pain temporarily, but to this day I'm still in pain.
What treatment did you have after the chiropractor, if any?
I had some injections done.
Okay.
For pain management.
You had one injection or more than one?
Just the one.
One injection. So there was a series of chiropractic treatments followed by a single injection, and the insurance company for the defendant said to Josh and I, we don't think that she's pierced that threshold. We don't think she has a permanent injury, and we're offering you nothing.
Bubkus.
Yeah, and what did you do about that, Mr. Gale?
Right, so Dean mentioned limited tort in Pennsylvania, full tort in Pennsylvania. In New Jersey, it's called a limitation on lawsuit option, otherwise known as the verbal threshold. And Jersey requires you to have a permanent injury. And typically, things like disfigurement, like scars, things like that will count. If you've had a non-displaced fracture, maybe not, but if it's displaced, probably. And then, things that are more serious than that, sure. Kathy had a disc bulge in her neck and a disc bulge in her lower back.
I want to say that most of us, if I gave everybody an MRI in this room right this second, you almost to a T will have a disc bulge or a herniated disc. It just comes with aging. So now the question is, can we prove that this disc bulge was caused by this accident rather than just something they happened to find on the MRI?
And And that's a good point. So the disc bulge is not as serious medically as what's called a disc herniation or a disc prolapse or a rupture or a total compression. And so sometimes a disc bulge, as Dean mentioned, is just caused by age, the natural degenerative progress of aging. And fortunately for us, again, we had a tremendous client. Valerie was a youthful person, loved to dance, was a hard worker, and she had a vibrant life. She is beautiful. She presents well. And the defense made the mistake of using an analogy of a grape. And a grape, over time, if you let it sit out, as it comes off the vine, it looks ripe. It looks plump, juicy. Exactly.
Not shriveled.
Not shriveled. But if you let it sit out over time, it will become dried. It will lose its water content. And
It becomes a raisin.
it becomes a raisin. Exactly.
This was the defense.
This was the defense.
The
was the
raisin
defense.
defense. Defense of defense.
So the defense argued that that Valerie's spine, the discs inside, they're made of like water for the most part, and over time, with the natural degenerative process, they can lose their water content. It's a process called desiccation, and their argument was that the changes in Valerie's spine were due to that desiccation, that loss of water content. But again, they used that word, the grape. And so we were able to turn that against them. And we'll talk about this in more detail later, but Valerie is not a grape. She's
Fine
vibrant.
wine.
Yes, she is. Exactly. And so, Jersey almost makes you walk around with an MRI machine attached to you. Because it would be really helpful if we had an MRI that was taken just the day before Valerie's accident. And if that MRI showed that she had no disc bulges, and then she had an MRI the day after the accident which showed that she had disc bulges, then obviously it's related to this accident. We didn't have that benefit, and that's just not practical. But the law in New Jersey almost requires that. So we had a very difficult case with Valerie, and she knew that going in because of the verbal threshold, because she had not known that she had to go out and make this affirmative choice to not be a limitation on lawsuit, that she would have to contact your insurance company. Most people don't know this, that you have to contact your insurance company and select the no limitation on lawsuit option. And so, we had the disc bulges, we had the injection, but there's an important step between the disc bulge, the MRI showing the disc bulge, and the injection, which is something called an EMG. It's a nerve conduction study. And in that nerve conduction study, you get, if you have one for the upper extremities, they will put little pins going down your arm, and then they are attached to an electricity source. And they press a button, and you're able to feel the electricity go through your arm. And if you don't feel a normal sensation, the machine will demonstrate this. And it's something that cannot be faked. It's electricity. It's the measure of the conduction of electricity. And in Valerie's case, it showed that she had a positive EMG. She explained that she had the pain in her arm. And oftentimes, if you have an injury to your spine, to one of the discs on the spine, that can press against a nerve. And that nerve will cause pain or tingling or paresthesia is another word for it, going down your arm.
Well, your vocabulary is extensive, man.
So I didn't go to medical school.
I hear you.
I went to law school. I didn't learn this in law school either. I learned this at MyPhillyLawyer, where we work directly with the doctors. We have to learn the medicine.
Right.
And so, again, I don't have a medical degree, but I have knowledge based off of my experience working in this field that most people wouldn't have, or maybe other lawyers that don't take the time to look at the medical records, to get to know the medicine. It takes a lot of work, a lot of training to be able to know this medicine, know how this works. And so we had to argue to the insurance company and ultimately to the judge and the jury that Valerie's EMG positive findings showed that she had a permanent injury. It wasn't just the disc bulges, but it was the nerve damage that she had. And because of that nerve damage, she needed that injection. She ultimately benefited from that injection. But again, we're talking about an epidural injection. And an epidural needle is about that long. And for the radio audience, it's about 6 to 10 inches long. And that goes into the spine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems that can happen if it's not done correctly, such as you can get
Paralysis.
At worst, you can get paralysis. But even before paralysis, there can be consequences that are not helpful. Fortunately, that didn't happen. But Valerie, who works actually as a phlebotomist, so she's used to drawing blood, but not working with needles that are that big. And oftentimes you hear some scary stories about what can happen to people. And so it's a frightening experience to go through that process and get an epidural injection. Sometimes
And we actually had the doctor bring the needle to show the jury, so they were able to see exactly what the client had to
The
experience.
needle just makes you cringe alone, man.
And, you know, there's a reason that the insurance company made a zero offer, and that is because most of the time they win these cases. But they didn't in this instance.
Right. So that they have almost like a factory of churning these claims. And if you don't meet certain criteria, they're not going to offer you any money. And so we had to figure out what was the weak link in that chain, in that factory chain. And in this instance, we had a testimony from a chiropractor. We had testimony from a pain management doctor. They had testimony from a board-certified neurosurgeon. And that sounds really impressive. But what we were able to show was that this board-certified neurosurgeon, despite all of his credentials, he did not look at all of the evidence. He did not look at the data, for example, of the EMG. The data, which cannot be faked. It is not a subjective test. It is an objective test. And he claimed that that data was not available to him. And that was ridiculous. I mean, the data, we produced the data. We had it. They certainly could have subpoenaed the medical provider and gotten it directly. But they chose to sit on, it's not available to me.
And how much money did we find out that neurosurgeon made from the insurance industry to provide that kind of sloppy testimony?
That's the key here, because ultimately we were able to show the jury that this system, this factory, is based on greed. It's not based on a fair analysis of whether somebody is truly injured and has a permanent injury. It's based on how many times can we get a zero result. And so this neurosurgeon, who otherwise had a very good CV, a curriculum vitae, he had
Resume.
He had a great education. He had a great professional history. But then he stopped. Then he became a professional witness for the defense.
How much?
So you want the total number, or you want the each time number?
I want the total number.
The total number is he basically makes over $1 million every year just testifying for the defense.
Yeah. And
It's a
see,
good job if you can get it, huh?
yeah. You see, that, again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it's that kind of digging in on the other side's case that separates us from other firms that may have not taken the time and put in the effort to try this case that was not, at first glance, all that impressive. There is no surgery. There was no significant wage loss. There was no, none of the things that you look at and go, oh my God, how did you survive that accident? Those are the kinds of cases that you would expect to get a result like we got for Valerie, on this case. Valerie's case went to a jury. We put our faith into the hands of 6 other people, 8?
7.
7 people in New Jersey, and they came back with a verdict in favor of Valerie in excess of $100,000.
Good for you.
And, even that, when you think about it, we geared up and tried this case, 2 expert witnesses, a week in New Jersey for a $100,000 claim. I didn't want to do that. I don't want to have to do that. But we have to set the tone for the insurance companies that if they're coming up against our firm and they give us a zero offer, they're going to have to try the case to the full extent of the law. And so it's that expectation so that if you become a client tomorrow, we've already paved the way in New Jersey for the insurance industry to understand that we're not backing down. They're either going to make a fair offer or we're going to try the case.
And like Kathy's case, there's a number of law firms that would not have taken Valerie's case at all because Valerie did not have a disc herniation. So in this case, we were actually not the only plaintiff. There was another co-plaintiff, and that co-plaintiff had several disc herniations, which they claimed were from this accident, whereas Valerie had disc bulges, which again are a lesser condition from a medical standpoint. So we were not only going up against the insurance company, which took this position of a zero offer, we were going up against, in some way, a co-plaintiff that potentially or arguably could have had worse injuries than our own client. But through the testimony, fortunately, we had the benefit of going first. We were the first to present our testimony to the jury and the judge. And we were able to make the impression based off of that testimony that Valerie presented and that our experts presented that already set the tone for the rest of the case. Because we were able to demonstrate that there was a level of greed involved from the defense side. It wasn't necessarily the fault of the other driver, but it was the fault of the defense as a whole, that they took a position where they were not accepting responsibility for their insured. And despite all the hurdles that we faced, ultimately, it comes down, Dean, not to me, it comes down to the client. And in this instance, Valerie, like Kathy, was a credible witness. She is somebody that presents well. And she testified truthfully and honestly, didn't exaggerate, didn't go onto the stand and cry her eyes out or anything like overly dramatic. She was truthful. She talked about how this accident changed her life.
Let me ask you, Valerie, what was your expectation before trial began? And was the experience something that met your expectation or was different?
My expectation before it began was on the low side, I have to be honest with you. I was a little discouraged because it was taking so long and it just seemed like everything was against me. But as time went on, and after I met Josh, my confidence went sky high because Josh was very confident, Josh was very caring and very sympathetic and very knowledgeable. And that gave me a lot of confidence that my case would be successful.
One interesting fact for Valerie's case is that her accident took place several years before this trial. Do you remember the exact date of the accident?
Yes, September the 6th of 2020.
2020, and we went to trial in 2025, 5 years after the accident.
What took so long?
Right, so in New Jersey, the court is basically subject to the calendar of the attorneys involved, and the attorney on the other side, all he does is try cases for this particular insurance carrier. And so he has a busy calendar. So the case got delayed over a year and a half just based off of that attorney's calendar. And the court just goes along with it. And so as much as we pressed to try to get this case done as quickly as possible, it did take that amount of time, but ultimately we were able to get the result that we thought was possible.
The same thing happens here in Pennsylvania in Montgomery County. Horrible county. They got it. Horrible. They got to clean that up. All right, folks, we got to take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be right back after my sponsors have their way with you. All right, guys, we're going to do some
Raffle time.
quick raffles.
Oh, thank you, so did you.
Not quite done, but you're doing great.
They got those tickets, everybody.
Oh, this is for?
This is for
I feel a winner.
Lady. Oh no, we did the first
What?
one,
What?
Classic.
What?
Yeah, Classic Soul Festival at the Dell Music Center on July 19th.
Oh, we gonna
Whispers,
get our
Blue
jam on.
Notes, Blue Magic, the Ladies of the Sky, Intruders, and Bloodstone.
Ooh, Intruders.
And that is going to ticket number 1741.
1741.
Okay. Well, I need it still.
Yes, you do. We don't actually have your tickets yet.
What number are you, Valerie?
47.
47, Dean.
We'll make sure you get a picture with Dean now.
All right.
47.
All right, one more.
All right, this one is for Lady B's basement party at the Dell Music Center, August 24th. There's a whole,
Big Daddy Kane.
yeah,
Oh, nice.
Big Daddy Kane. How about 1745? Who's 1745?
All right, so you guys, I'll get with you after.
All right, yeah, right? Okay. Here we go. All right. I shook it up. Yeah, why not? The dash cam goes to 1747.
That's me. That's me. Dean, that's me.
Oh my God!
Valerie?
Yeah. Yes, it is. All right. All right. Here we go. That's my ticket this time.
What's your number?
Another hands-free cell, 1737. No.
There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Wrong, not him.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
No.
There you go. Congratulations.
We got to go back on.
The keys to the Bentley, we're not going to do that.
You want the car payments?
I thought it was already paid for.
Have we gone live again?
We're still on YouTube, right?
No, I'm talking about radio.
No, we're not radio live yet. Sarah? We don't hear anything? Yeah, when we hear it here.
Okay, we should be live.
We are live. We're
We are.
back.
We're back.
We're back, everybody.
Okay. We're wrapping up with Valerie, who has been our client from the very beginning, 5 years. 5 years before we were able to try her case in New Jersey. There had been a zero offer for her neck and back injury, rear end accident. You would think these things are simple and quick. For Valerie, that didn't work out the same way, but the end was worth the cooking, I think.
Worth the wait.
Yeah. Over $100,000 verdict. The insurance company was New Jersey Manufacturers. I have no confidentiality agreement with them, so I can throw them under the bus.
Throw who under the bus? Is that you?
They're the worst.
The
New
worst.
Jersey Manufacturers, the worst insurance company in New Jersey to resolve cases. The funny thing is, this case could have been resolved. The first step in New Jersey before you actually try your case is it must go through arbitration. And so an attorney in New Jersey gets a call in the morning, and he has to show up at the courthouse, and we present our case to him. The other side presents their case, and he puts a number down and says, this is what I think it should settle for. And that arbitration was, they brought a result of $50,000.
$55,000.
$55,000 at arbitration. He said, I think the case should settle for $55,000. The insurance company said, we'll give you nothing.
And in fact, the judge recommended $27,000.
Right. So then we went to the judge just before trial. The judge again tries to settle the case, and he said, well, give him half of the arbitration award. The arbitration award's $55,000. Give him $27,000. And the insurance company said nothing.
Zero.
And so in that was the lead up to trial, and we ended up with well over $100,000.
More than double the $55,000.
More than double, yeah. And so shame on them. And I'm proud of Josh, and I'm proud of Valerie for a job well done at trial. And
Good job.
you know,
It really is a traumatic experience for a client, and it wasn't just a week. Actually, it was over the course of 2 weeks, really, that we were in the courtroom because the Jersey courts, they only have trial 3 days a week. So we were in the courtroom about 8 days total over the course of a 2-week period of time, and every morning I met Valerie at about 7:55 in the parking lot, and we talked about what to expect for that day. And
7:55 every day.
7:55 every morning in the Camden County Courthouse parking lot, and we talked about how things were going, and we became very close, and it was a great experience to work with Valerie on this case, and
Likewise.
yeah, and we were both very happy with the result.
Yeah, and that does not happen without the work that Josh put in and Valerie put in leading up to that. Again, there was the interrogatories, the depositions, and they dig into your past. As a client or prospective client, you must understand that your medical history from the beginning of time until now becomes relevant, because if the injury wasn't caused by the accident but was something pre-existing, they're entitled to know that, and so they will dig and dig and dig. And lastly, before we wrap up the hour, social media. They will, the second you have a claim, your social media accounts are hacked by the defendants, and they want to see all those pictures of you smiling and dancing and skiing down the ski slope, or carrying out, bags of Louis Vuitton from the King of
Gunji
Prussia
Falls
Mall
in Jamaica.
man. So
So
that they can paint a picture that you're a healthy individual who's got their stuff together, and that you're living life large, and that this accident hasn't really caused you any problems.
And what's great with Valerie was the picture that we found was a picture of her sitting with her 1-year-old nephew just before the accident. It was the month prior, goddaughter, right before the accident. And Valerie looks so happy in that photograph, and the picture can say 1,000 words. Just like a video or post on social media can hurt you. In this instance, for Valerie, it was very helpful.
So, with that, if we can be of any help, all you got to do is give us a call at 215-227-2727, the number for all things legal in Philly and beyond. Thanks, guys, for participating in today's show.
My pleasure.
you were a great audience.
Yep, thanks to the audience. We'll be back next week, Manuel.
Absolutely. Doing
Same
what
time,
we do.
same place. See you then.
Have a good day, everybody. Happy Juneteenth.
All right, guys.
Josh, it's a pleasure. Man, listen.
Yeah, the
Hey, Josh puts in some. Can Josh get some love? Josh puts in some work, man. We all need a Josh in our lives.
That was great.